All right, so today I wanted to talk about this article out of the Calgary Herald and basically just talk about it. And it's new K to 6 curriculum gets top grades from educational experts. I'm not going to read the article because it's just a lot of mumbo jumbo. They don't really go into exactly what they're changing specifically or what they're changing it to. But I wanted to kind of talk about this idea in general because, as expected, all the crazy leftists are acting crazy as usual. Now, um, let's just be honest about this stuff. Like again, like I really don't like beating around the bush with people. The reason why the leftists are complaining about this is that the leftists want to be able to brainwash kids into their political ideology. It's very simple, right? They want to be able, like, let's just go over the list. They want to be able to, I mean, number one, they want to teach their hypersexualized, sexual curriculum. That's the one thing they want to do. They want to you have, I mean, take Ontario for example. The guy that designed their curriculum under, was it Wynne, I think was the crazy leftist leader's name. The guy was literally a sex offender. Like, not hyperbole at all. The guy was literally a sex offender, and he's the one deciding the sex ed curriculum. Like, again, like, it's just crazy. Um, so again, and not only that, they want to teach very young kids about stuff that, why are you teaching them? Like, you're, like, seriously, like, again, I'm not saying these people are pedos, but like, if you want to teach kindergarten kids and grade one kids about stuff like literal sexual stuff, you're either rather insane or you're a pedophile in my mind. Like, I don't think that there's much in between on that stuff. You know, if you want to, again, personally, I think it should be up to the parents. I mean, that the government does a terrible job of all pretty much teaching anything. But if you're gonna do it, like, wait till high school. Like again, I don't understand any of that stuff. But um, the more important stuff is that they also want to give people a completely distorted view of history. The natives were the noble savages and so peaceful, and the white people just came and stole all the land, and they're the worst people ever, right? Which is a complete lie. I mean, it's true to an extent, but there's a lot of half truths and very misleading things that they bring up. I mean, number one, the natives were not peaceful by any means. They routinely genocided other tribes. They practiced cannibalism. They stole each other's land. And it's very funny that that's pretty much the only situation to where the left is big on property rights. Right? They could care less about property rights when it comes to pretty much anything else. But yet, when it comes to the land was stolen from the natives, then all of a sudden they're big on, like, again, like, they don't care about it, right? They're just using it to gain power. And again, the other thing too is that, um, again, white Europeans did do a lot of bad stuff, but that was normal for the time. But again, the other big lie too when it comes to history is slavery, right? Slavery. What is the first thing people think of when they hear slavery? It's black people in the southern states. But the reality is that slavery in the southern states was practiced on a much smaller to a much smaller degree and on a much shorter timeline than basically everywhere in Africa and the Middle East. I mean, slavery still goes on in parts of Africa and the Middle East, right? And even at the high point of slavery in the States, there were still as many white people enslaved in the world as there were in the States, right? So again, the other big lie too is that it was exclusively a racial thing, which is true to an extent, but not to the extent people think. Um, and again, the other big thing too is that the majority of slaves were captured by other black people, right? So there's just the lies is just what I really can't stand too. Like smallpox blankets too. That's another lie they tell people is, for the simple reason too that germ theory hadn't been discovered yet, right? So again, like, just the lies that they tell people is, I just can't stand it, right? Like, if you want to tell people, if you want to hate on white people, at least be honest with people. Like at least be honest. Like that's the thing I just can't stand. And this is the way you know people are wrong, right? Now, I mean, like Trump, prime example of it, or basically like a lot of other political figures I can get into as well. But Trump's a prime example of it. If you think Trump is this terrible person, fine, but give people some legitimate reasons. And this is the way you know Trump isn't really all. Again, I have my criticisms, absolutely, but this is the way you know he isn't that bad. Is that the biggest criticisms of Trump in the mainstream and what the average person will tell you, they're completely false, or at the very least, misleading. Right? Trump-Russia collusion, complete lie. Grab him by the you-know-what, taken grossly out of context. Kids in cages, well, they don't care about it when it was Obama doing it, now when it was Biden doing it, right? So again, if Trump of him in the mainstream, because
Um, the reason, the way you know he isn't all that bad is that the majority of criticisms you hear about him are either completely false or taken grossly out of context. So, coming back to the whole curriculum thing, like, if white people were so terrible, then why are all the criticisms lobbed at them out of context or complete lies, right? Whites were also responsible for like 97% of major scientific advancements. Do they get any thanks for that? No, right? So again, it's just the lies that I can't stand. Um, and not to mention too, there's all the woke stuff that the left wants to push as well. They want to push critical race theory. They want to push all these other things. And again, this is why the left is upset, right? This is why they're upset. They want to brainwash people. Now, people say, oh, what incentive do they think they have? Well, from their point of view, they're not brainwashing people. Like, obviously, I don't think that these people are twirling their mustache saying, oh, we're going to brainwash kids. Well, no, I don't think that. But looking at it from an honest and objective point of view, they are brainwashing kids. And anyone who's been in a public school over the last 20 years should recognize that, especially lately, right? It's gotten worse over time. Like, not to mention too, there's the complete another big way that people don't understand as well is that in society, one of the biggest ways we're lied to is not necessarily straight up lies. A lot of times it's lies by omission, right? And a good example of that is that the history we're taught about, um, you know, like dictators and um, stuff. I guess. I guess I'll just put it in a better way. Like when we're taught about like 20th century history, the big take-home point is always the World War II Germans, right? That's basically the vast majority of the time spent on 20th century history in well, usually high school, right? But again, that's a massive lie by omission because people coming out of high school think that the biggest atrocity done in the 20th century was the Holocaust. Now, the Holocaust was absolutely horrible. I'm not denying that by any stretch of the imagination. But the numbers are what? I think it was like 6, 7 million people died of the Holocaust. That's terrible. That's absolutely horrible. But and I don't mean, like I said, I don't mean this in any bad way whatsoever. You look at the body count from the World War II Germans, I think the number was what, 10, 15 million. If you look at the communist body count, you're up over 100 million. But yet, how many people know that? If you went and polled people, on the street, or even, polled people in general, I would bet money the majority of people would say fascists killed more people than communists did in the 20th century, even though the numbers are not even close. It was communists by a long shot, right? So they're not necessarily lying. They're just only telling one side of the story. Now, again, why do public schools not teach that? Well, it's obvious that public school teachers and the unions and the people that tend to make these curriculums are usually overtly leftist, a lot of times outright communists. So, of course, they're not going to teach people about that. And of course, they're going to pretend that the only atrocities that went on in the 20th century was the World War II Germans. right? So that's just the way they're not necessarily lying to you directly, but they are lying by omission and not telling people that, hey, wouldn't you know, guys, that the far leftists were they actually killed a lot more people than they're not actually far right, but even if you want to pretend they are, the far leftists killed a lot more people than the far right. Maybe we should be a little bit more concerned about that, right? They never tell people that. They also never tell people about what led up to the World War II Germans taking over. They never tell people that if it wasn't for central banking fiat money, a fiat money system, the World War II Germans wouldn't have thought it probably never would have happened, right? Because after World War One, the way the Germans basically paid the debts that they had to France and the other, the Versailles Treaty, right? The way they did it is basically just print money, which led to the guy who was the leader of the World War II Germans, right? I mean, yeah, that's something. Again, they're never going to do that too because the way the left gets elected is by buying votes, right? So again, that's just another lie by omission that this whole fiat money system it has never turned out well in the past. Maybe we should do something different. No, they're never going to teach people that, right? They teach you a lot about well, not a lot, but they teach you about the Rwandan genocide. Well, they leave out arguably the most important part is that what was causing the tension between the Hutus and the Tutsis was the group that ended up genociding the other group. I completely blanking on which one was which here, but um, the one that genocided the other group felt that they had been treated unfairly by the government for going back like 50, 60 years. I think it was going back to like the 1920s. Right? What is a comparable situation? Oh, black people are oppressed, right? Oh, natives are oppressed, right? Very similar situation. If you actually look into it, it's a very similar situation. And you look at the what they were saying. It's very similar to what blacks are saying nowadays and natives say in Canada, right? It's very similar, right? So again, these are just the lies by omission, right? And again, I could come up with a lot more examples. Those are just the biggest ones, right? I mean, again, another, like I said, the big lie. One of the most important lies, too. I don't think people realize how important understanding the banking system is, right? Because every single fiat currency throughout history has gone bust. Going back to the fall of Rome, over 1,000 years, almost 2,000 years was when they started. I think it was around just after the birth of Christ was when the Roman Empire started. I think again, I'm no history expert on that aspect of it, but one thing I do know is that we have examples of fiat currencies failing going back to the fall of Rome. We have hundreds of examples of fiat currencies failing, but yet do they ever teach people about the dangers of fiat currencies? No, most people don't even know what a fiat currency is. What percentage of people know how money is created? 1%? I mean, people say, oh, the government just creates it. Well, number one, that's only one of the ways money is created, and number two, there's a lot more that goes into it than that. Right? That's like saying, well, um, how do I eat? Well, food just shows up on grocery store shelves, and I go and I buy it and I eat it. Like that's basically what would be the equivalent to that, right? Um, so yeah, I mean, this is the problem that the left wants to indoctrinate people. I'm not saying the right doesn't want to do it at all either, but again, the left is overtly collectivist, right? Meaning that's something they're very concerned about. The right isn't overtly collectivist, so they're not as concerned about brainwashing people. And the way though, another way, on top of all the ones I brought up, that that the left wants to brainwash people is that you'll always see them talking about, oh, the UCP just wants to, brainwash kids into their pushing Christianity and bigotry and all. Because again, like something I bring up a lot before is that most people's political worldview is just a projection of their own worldview. Not always, not always, but this is the way you know, because what the left tends to accuse the other people of is usually what they're doing, right? They accuse Trump of kids in cages. Turned out it was them that started it, and it was them that's doing it even more now. They accuse the right of being racist all the time. It's them that pushes critical race theory, which is racist by definition, and pushing for segregation. Like, again, so when it comes to people, like if they accuse other people of doing other things without a very high bar of evidence, you usually want to assume that it's them themselves that actually believe that, right? So yeah, that's what I wanted to bring up today. So anyway, if you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you check out those links below. Follow me on those other platforms. If you want to donate, you can do that as well. I very much appreciate whatever support I can get. But at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe and stay tuned for more.